Hi, I'm Mason Beals. I'm with Chris Gordon on Hellblazer Biz.
Everyone, I have the honour and the privilege of the company of Mason Beals, who plays Theodore Roosevelt in INSP's Elkhorn, which is currently airing at the moment. So thank you for joining me. I really appreciate your time, Mason.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. Looking forward to it.
But yeah, so I've got quite a few questions. We'll try and plough through what we can.
Yeah.
This time we've got. Because I started watching Elkhorn. I found out about it because I was speaking to Ashton Selecki, who's Medora in the show. She was been on previously for a film that she was in, Roswell Delirium, and we got chatting. And then she mentioned this show's coming out, so I was like, "Oh, that sounds interesting." And I've been sitting waiting for it to come.
Yeah.
So it's finally out. Unfortunately, in the UK, I've still got to connect via VPN.
Oh,
to
nice.
get it onto YouTube on a Friday.
Good, yeah. That's how we like to watch all of our content. Is like sort of semi-legally through a VPN. That's
exactly.
It's like watching Oppenheimer on your phone.
Yeah. So I'll just say that for anyone who watches, it is legal. It's fine.
Yeah. Of course. Yeah. Not gonna throw you under the bus.
Yeah. Yeah. Cheers and thanks for that.
Yeah.
Yes. But I wanted to watch it basically. I wanted to try and get in touch, and obviously, and when I realised I was reaching out to people, I thought it was fantastic to see it. And I've not seen this week's yet, but the first 3 episodes have already aired. I think the 4th episode was out last night.
Yep.
Yesterday, and it'll be on YouTube today. First thing, so I mean, how's it feel? You kind of playing Theodore Roosevelt. He's like one of the 26th president, one of the most famous names going. So how does it feel when you landed that role?
Yeah, I mean, it was really crazy because it was like, the audition process was like, I did like a self-tape at first, and like, I'm a goofy little comedy guy. I mostly make like sketch comedy and stuff. And when I got that, I was like, I'm not really like a serious actor. Like, I'm not like a dramatic, like serious kind of guy. Definitely not presidential. And then was doing the audition, I like kind of, I decided to sort of put my own spin on it and like do some research about it. And then it was, truly just like one thing led to another. And like casting was like, listen, we're not talking to anybody else. Like, you're probably our guy. And I was like, okay, wow, this is like really happening. And then when it was kind of like final and official, it was definitely like, it just felt like I was about to go on this like big adventure. And it did feel very parallel to like the adventure he's going on. You know what I mean? Because it's like we're shooting a Western, and like, that's, it's definitely... Yeah, I don't know. I just kind of felt like I was also going on this adventure with him kind of in this first season. And definitely, definitely felt it was very cool to like have a different perspective on like Teddy Roosevelt, not like the guy who's like already been through everything that he has been through, but instead it's like this is kind of his origin story a little bit, like if he's a superhero, you know what I mean? And so it's just fun to sort of bring a different kind of depth and a different sort of like perspective to the character. So it was definitely like super exciting and just like a lot to sort of like a lot to play around with.
Yeah, I can imagine because like you say, this is kind of an origin story because he's what, 24? He was 24, I think, when he moved
25
into the Badlands.
This first season.
24, right. So very young, and I think he's already well known. I mean, I spoke to Jeff yesterday, and because Roosevelt was quite well known and respected from New York. In New York he was respected, I'll say. When he came out to the Badlands, I think that respect was a little bit lower.
Yeah. Oh, totally. Yeah.
He was like,
I mean, he was definitely like a little rich boy coming from New York who had like a good political career going and stuff. I don't know. I'm not shitting on Teddy Roosevelt at all, but I definitely say that he is sort of an OG Nepo baby a little bit, because he definitely like comes from like a very wealthy family. But like at the same time too, like he didn't rest on his laurels. Like he did like go out there and like really make a name for himself and like in the political scene in New York, But no, definitely coming out to the Badlands, everybody's like, oh, you're that Roosevelt fella. And I'm like, yeah, I am.
So no, it's good to hear that. And I say it's interesting, like you say, you're going on a journey yourself, because he's kind of gone from a journey, because he was wanted to be an adventurer, a hunter, and all of this stuff. And I've got to say, he's obviously like, he's weedy, like you've just explained. He's like, he looks quite weedy, but he's not. He packs a hell of a punch.
Oh yeah.
That's what threw me in the show. You're just watching him, and he's standing up to these really, really big cowboys, and he knocks them, and it's hilarious to watch. To be fair, it's just
I
like, whoa,
know, I know.
go Teddy, yeah.
That was like the funny thing about like again in the early stages of production and like casting and stuff like that, that they were like, I was talking with like the original showrunner at one point who was like, who had like written the pilot and several of the other episodes, and he was kind of just like, we'll have to make sure he's not, for a lack of better terms, a pipsqueak. And I was like, yeah, I get that. I could easily just be in pipsqueak territory more often than not. So it definitely was like, it was like tough to kind of like, be this like weird little guy in the West, because he's a weird little guy. I describe him as a weird. Yeah. It's like in this like previous episode, in episode 3, it shows like when he first meets Alice, and she's like, "Oh, you're the boy with mice in his pockets," because he was always just having like creatures and frogs and everything like that with him, and so he's a little weirdo, and but at the same time too, he just he loves to fight, and he loves to box, and he doesn't really take no for an answer. It's so he's a weird dichotomy.
Yeah, I'd say so.
Yeah.
But and I guess it's and I say your portrayal of him is brilliant, because he does come across very much so like that, and you just very, I say unassuming, but I'd say unassuming in some ways, but also there's that air of self-importance around him, of very much so.
Oh yeah.
Of like you say, I come from wealth, which in those days, well, sadly it's still today, isn't it? Pretty much, it's still got that big divide of the people who, because I come from wealth, so you can just do what I say.
Right. No, totally. I think that's what I liked a lot about like this portrayal of him, was that like he's not just a over the plate like hero. Like I think he's got a lot of like, he's coming into the show with like a really heavy trauma, and like he's dealing with it in the only way that he kind of knows how. And so that was what I liked about it, that I was like, oh, we're not trying to paint him as this perfect person, because how boring would that be? Like if he was just like flawless and every choice he made was like the smart, decisive, good choice. But instead it's like, yeah, he constantly messes up,
Oh yeah, definitely. And one of those choices we see as well is because obviously we know the trauma that he's come, because he's lost, he's had those 2 losses, very big losses to him. But he's also left his daughter as well. Is it his daughter, isn't it?
Yeah.
His daughter.
Yeah.
Just having to remember. He's just abandoned her. So he just literally has, like I say, for all his pompousness and his self-importance, he's just, the way he's dealt with the grief and the loss is just to run away.
Yeah.
And that's how it's come across. Run away as far as he can, and just try and be the complete opposite to who he is.
I know. And it's like he'll try to like, in the first episode, he tries to like kind of excuse it a little bit, of being like, oh, my sister will take care of her a lot better than I could. It's like maybe there's some truth to that, where it's like, yeah, like he wouldn't maybe be in the best mental state, and who knows, like the standards of living at the time, whatever. But like regardless, he totally abandoned his daughter. Like there is there's no getting around that. And to me, I'm like, that's part of like one of the biggest flaws in him in this show. And again, it's like one of the things is I, as an actor, really like, because it's like, yeah, you have to kind of, performance wise, it's like you have to excuse it a little bit. Like you have to like find motivation as to why he thinks this is the right decision, because everybody thinks they're doing the right decision, right? Like all the time, everybody thinks they're doing the right thing. And even when somebody's doing something bad, it's like, they think they're doing the right thing, And so, yeah, I think the show is like interesting for that it's like nobody is out here trying to paint him like he's altruistic, It's like he's got a good sense of justice, no doubt about it. Like I think he does have a good sense of justice, but like, yeah, he's got a lot of hurt and he doesn't know how to deal with it.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. And they're running away because you couldn't, in those days as well, it's not as if they've got planes and stuff where it's quite quick. Like if you wanted to go and see his daughter, no, he's gone as far away as he can.
Oh,
It's like right across the country.
totally, yeah.
And it's like, yeah, does make you wonder. So how did you prepare and research? We kind of touched a bit on it. How did you research for the role? Any pivotal moments which were crucial in the script, maybe that are crucial for your understanding of the character of Teddy?
Yeah,
I'll call him Teddy.
Yeah, early on, it's funny though too. I'll say it's like because everybody like in interviews and stuff like that and just like in conversation, people call him Teddy. And the funny thing is that like nobody called him Teddy at this point. Like everybody called him Theodore.
Yeah, it's all Theodore.
Yeah.
Theodore, yeah.
And so it's this kind of funny thing. Like even now when I call him Teddy, it does feel like almost sacrilegious where I'm like, oh, I don't feel like I'm supposed to be calling him that. But anyway, as far as preparation goes, I primarily focused on some of the text that he wrote during this time. I tried not to look too far forward with research because it's kind of like, because it's not currently relevant to this series and this show. And so, yeah, like for the audition, I basically just looked up speeches from Teddy Roosevelt, and like he only had a few that were like recorded. And so I was kind of listening to sort of his affectation, and it was this thing that I was like, oh, it is almost a little sort of like mid-Atlantic, and it's kind of like, very New Yorky. But then, one part that I had that was kind of sort of my like cornerstone sort of like motivation throughout the rest of it was he was writing about being out in the Dakota Territory, during this time. And he had this quote that I'll paraphrase a little bit that was like, there were bears, there were rattlesnakes, there were bandits, there were all these things. And he was like scared basically to be out there. And he basically said like, by pretending to not be afraid, I gradually became not afraid, and for me, that felt like really like a good sort of motivation that it's like, he is kind of faking it till he can make it out here, it's like, he's constantly being like, I'm one of the boys, and it's like, and all the boys are kind of like, nah, I don't know, Four Eyes. And so I think that's kind of like one of the things that I kind of take with it. And again, like, I also just think, just reading about how big of a nerd he is, I really do try to play it like 50% tough guy, 50% nerd, like that to me is Teddy Roosevelt. And so that's kind of the idea. And then from there, it's kind of a matter of like, making sure like reading the scripts and like seeing what the text is and then figuring out what the subtext is. And and just kind of going from there, and I definitely think like, the people around him help shape who he is as well. It's like he'll do something and it'll cut to another character being like, oh, I don't know, like he's definitely like I said, he's definitely a little weird guy.
Yeah, for sure. And one of the characters that, as I say, I've only watched 3 episodes, so I know the 4th episode's brings him back into it as well. Is the Frenchman, the Marquis de Mores, and
another weirdo.
That relationship between, I mean, exactly, and it was great as I say, speaking to Jeff, I kind of got where he's come from that character and looking into it, and the rivalry between the two of them already. You can see it straight away. As far as, let's say, with Roosevelt coming from New York, he's got that richness. And like Jeff said, the Marquis kind of got a respect for him because he's also from wealth, and he gives him a bit more of a respect to say that, you've got that wealthy background, you're kind of equal to me. He still wants him. He still wants to show Roosevelt that he rules the area and it's his domain.
I think it's like the Marquis and Medora both represent so much of like what Teddy is very much against at this time in his life. It's like, he just got done being a politician in New York where he was avidly taking down corruption, in the sort of like New York political system. And he comes out to the North Dakota or just to the Dakota territories and realizes it's being led by 2 people who are nothing but corruption. And yet they are both being like, we're the same, aren't we? Huh? And he's trying to be like, no, I'm not like you guys. Like, he's like, I want to be like a man of the people, that's everything he's trying to say. Where it's like these 2 other ones, like, take absolute pride in being just like elitist and above all. And And yeah, just like
Yeah.
again, they're just sort of the antithesis of like what he's kind of standing for during this time, and I think and always as well. You know, like I said, he always had a good sense of justice.
Yeah.
And so it's a lot of fun to kind of like be in scenes with the both of them because it's like, you know, Medora is from New York as well. So it really is, she is kind of like his
Yeah.
past. And then like the Marquis is sort of also a fish out of water and doesn't believe in any sort of justice, just only just his way. And he's not even the rich one. That's the other thing too, is like, you know, Medora's the money.
She's the
Yeah,
rich one.
Medora's the money man. So
Yeah.
it is kind of like, okay, what do you even do, Marquis? Like, you just make weird green soup, you know?
Yeah. I think with that one as well, it's sort of the Marquis from the French, and it's still kind of a bit colonialist back there. He's probably got that
Yeah.
mentality, and because I know he moved on to Indochina
Oh,
after that.
yeah.
You know, and that's good. You know, huge, you know, colonization over there as well. It started the Vietnam War, really, wasn't it? But never mind. That's another story completely. But yeah, so yeah, you can see where those two personalities clash, and the chemistry that you three of you do have, because you know there's. Yeah, I know Ashton. I spoke to before, and obviously Jeff and you, Guy, and yourself now, Mason. It's all three of you. You feed off each other in that in the scene in The Frenchman, for example, in that table scene. It's just brilliant because there's not just what you say in the script; it's you as actors as well. It's the mannerisms that you've put into your own character and bringing those characters out, and the little looks, little sharp looks, the little suspected, you know, the little sus looks that maybe Roosevelt will throw, of like, I know what you're trying to get to me. I know what you're trying to get.
Yeah. No, totally. Again,
the nuances.
they're like so like there's two worlds kind of happening in this show. There is sort of like the Marquis and Medora's world, and then there's the cowboy world. And again, that's the split of like where Teddy Roosevelt is at. You know, it's like he's that sort of posh kind of world, and but he really wants to be a cowboy, you know? And that whole dinner scene is like, it's so funny because it's just so passive aggressive the entire time. It's like everything about it is just so like coy and like until it blows up, of course. But it's like passive aggressive and weird, and like little digs and little backstabbing things. And then you get to the cowboy world. If you watch episode 3, they just deal with everything on the surface. It's like, hey, I think you're stupid. Let's fight, you know? And it's like, what's really the better way to deal with things? Who knows? I'm sure it's a middle ground, you know? But yeah, that's kind of the fun thing of like the split in these two worlds, you know?
Yeah, definitely. So it's definitely this huge split between the class, like the class system between the two. And episode 3 as well, the fight you got into as well for the guy who's rustling. I can't remember the character's name. That's it, Tex, wasn't it? Yeah. And that again, that showed Roosevelt's just like determination, because he was hammered, he was at it, but nope, he was still getting up. He's like, no, the pride. You can see the pride in him. I am not going to let this happen.
I know. That was fun. Like both those fights. The actor's name is Mark, and he does. I think he does like a stunt show in like Vegas, and and so he's really great. He was really great to work with on that stuff. Obviously we had like fight coordinators as well. And yeah, those were both like just two. Like all the fighting in the show was like, it was definitely something very new to me. Like I'd only done like a little bit of stuff here and there action wise, like some other smaller projects. But definitely it's like just, yeah, it was so much fun to do fights, and then to like watch playback and be like, that looks pretty good. You know, it's like, it really looks like we just hit each other, you know? So it's like always fun. It's like you get to play the action hero side of things.
Fantastic. That's really cool. And obviously I know Roosevelt's got his friends as well. You've got Bill Sewell and his nephew, isn't it? Wilmot Dow, I think it is. Looking at my screen there.
I know. It's also like the strangest name too. It's like Wilmot Dow. It's like, I've never heard either one of those names before.
No, I've not heard of. Well, actually, no, Wilmot I have, because there's someone in the UK who's a comedian called Wilmot Brown. No, it wasn't Wilmot Brown. That was a character in a soap opera. There was another, but Wilmot's maybe it's just a sort of an old type totally. Name. But so you've got, what is it, Elijah? Is it Eli Mahar and Garrett who play those type of characters, and you've got that's why I love the shows. When a show, you see a show and you can see, because you guys obviously have such a great rapport with each other as a whole cast, and that just exudes on screen, because those scenes are quite funny because they're the two, like, you know, the ranchers that they've been there, or they're the woodsmen, should I say? But they're woodsmen, but they're not cowboys, and even they get, you know, they've got more outdoors knowledge than Roosevelt, for example, in that area. But even they're getting ribbed by the true cowboys for like not being able to ride horses properly and stuff.
Yeah, and again, it's like if those cowboys were to go to like Maine and like try to be, you know, woodsmen, like they would get, you know, they'd get made fun of, they'd get teased. And no, it's definitely like those two are such a fun dynamic. Both Sewell and Dow. That's kind of the shorthand for the two of them. Yeah, they're a lot of fun because in this new episode, the episode that just aired last night, we get to see sort of a story arc start with Dow. That's a lot of fun. Not to spoil anything, but you know, him and Rosie start to connect a little bit. Yeah, and so that's a lot of fun. And then it's this fun sort of like dynamic because Sewell is so fatherly to Theodore. He's almost like less, like I almost seem like less fatherly and almost more like sometimes he kind of feels like a babysitter in a way. And there's nothing wrong with like a babysitter or even someone needing a babysitter, but it's like the energy behind it is like, I'm not going to tell you directly what you need and what you should do, but I will infer it all the time. And so that, whereas like Dow and Sewell definitely kind of have, you know, it's, you know, uncle and nephew, but it's like there's definitely like a father-son kind of thing going on there. And then it is funny because like, Dow, like, even though he's like a foot taller than me, he does feel like a little brother character a little bit. It's like this thing where he's like all happy and excited to be there, you know, like his energy is like almost kind of matches mine sometimes. So it's it's like I really do love the cast, you know. And then of course you have Merrifield, who's like the like actual sort of like he's kind of the staple sort of Medoran who really is kind of like the voice of reason in a lot of respects, you know, and also really cares also about Theodore too. So it's it's a great cast.
I love his mustache as well.
Matt's man, what a mustache, man! That thing. Have you gone to Matt's social media at all?
Yeah, I've seen him. He's
He's
the
a
rock star side of things.
baby.
It's like, whoa.
Yeah.
He is like wow.
I know.
Proper full on makeup. I was quite shocked. Really heavy rock as hard.
Dude, I know. It was so funny. Yeah, like kind of when he got cast, it was definitely like one, you're just like, okay, cool, awesome. You have like the perfect voice for this. Like he's just got that like deep cowboy voice and he's got the mustache.
Yeah.
And then then you go to his Instagram and it's like, and you're a rock star? What the hell? You know? He's an incredible whistler too, man. Like he'll just be like walking around set whistling and you're just like, I don't know anybody who can whistle that well. It's just so impressive.
I'll have to go. He's coming on next week. I'm chatting to him next week actually. So I'll have to
totally. Yeah, like get him say Mason told you to whistle and see what his reaction is.
Oh well, yeah, but again, that's just that chemistry that you've got. You know, Roosevelt's got his little posse with him. You've got the Marquis, he's got his little posse around with him as well. And that's what I say. There's only first few episodes, so there's 10 in the series this season, isn't there? At least, so really can't wait to see that kind of character development there. Are there any specific choices, perhaps, that your character of Roosevelt made or makes that you personally disagree with?
Yeah, great question. I mean, definitely, you know, like abandoning his daughter is like a big no-no. That's definitely one. I think, like, you know, as far as like decisions go, there's some stuff that starts happening in episode 8 in particular that he kind of again, not to like give anything away or spoil anything, but like he makes some sort of like decisions with his crew, you know, his posse a little bit, like the way he kind of starts to treat them a little bit is a little bit like, oh, we start to see sort of the hubris of Teddy come to fruition a little bit more. And he just starts to kind of be, his decisions, his pride clouds his judgment ultimately. And it's like, it's definitely not something that I agree with. I can like understand and like relate as a human being, but like definitely he starts to kind of make some decisions that you're like, okay, man, like you need to listen to the people who have been supporting you this entire time. You know, people who have just only had your back.
Yeah. Right. Okay. So I'll watch out for that.
Wait for episode 8. That's 4 weeks away or something.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Yeah, about 4 weeks away for that one now. But yeah, no, that's interesting to hear. So I'll keep my mind on them when I'm watching the show actually, because it's those. But you're right, those kind of decisions, it does get to me sometimes when you have people who've supported you all that way, and then they just start thinking a bit more of themselves and a bit more in themselves than up their own
Totally.
ass.
I know. It's like it's just this funny thing that it's like, you know, there's a lot of inferring, because that's the other thing. It's like at the end of the day, Teddy Roosevelt is still the money man. It's like he's still the person funding this whole endeavor, and there is such a class system that's going on that's like we don't really address it in the show very much, of like, you know, it is more inferred than anything else, but it's like at the end of the day, they're still sort of like, what Theodore wants, Theodore gets, you know? And it's like, well, maybe we should not always listen to him and really tell him what to do. But again, there's no telling him what to do. So it's like such a catch-22 that it's like, I wanted to tell him the right thing to do, but he's just not going to listen. So plus he's the boss and he's 25. It's like, yeah, I just think it's funny. And again, I also just think the height difference is so funny. I'm like significantly shorter than like so many of the other people in the posse, you know? And but I'm like standing like this, and I'm just always kind of like, and I love wide shots where it's like all of us are standing together, like in episode 3 when like, you know, Tex is walking away, I'm standing amongst them, and it's like this, you know, as far as like the height levels go, and I'm like, yep, that's the guy who's in charge.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that did look funny, to be fair, as well. And I think you say as well with sorry, my cat's now climbing the window out the back. I've just seen out the window, seen climbing out the window with Bill Sewell as well. Eli's characters. That you said is more like a babysitter father figure. Because when I was looking at that, in real life, Bill was only 12 years older than Roosevelt. Anyway, that's something really 12 or 15 years older. So he wasn't exactly, but the age again. I think back those days, especially that kind of an age gap was a lifetime.
Absolutely.
Pretty much, you know. So
I mean, even the fact that like Teddy Roosevelt like had like a promising political career at 25 says a lot, you know, that like he was like famous for being a politician at 25. You're like, okay, does that mean you got into politics when you were 20? Like, it's just, yeah, exactly. Like the age difference, it's that thing where it's like, yeah, it's just it's a weird perspective thing. Cause I even watched the show and I'm kind of like, we're all just children. like watching me and Medora in scenes together, I'm like, that's 2 kids talking, you know? Because like now, I mean, like the ages are accurate, right? Like I am 26. We were 25 when I was 25 when we started filming. And he was 25 in the show. So it's like, it is accurate, but I do look at it sometimes and I'm like, just what a kid, what a child, you know? It's like just a kid with a mustache. You know,
the way you say the way they are, especially
definitely, definitely. And it's like he also just, you know, during this time he had the one love, he had Alice, and it's like it's funny because I remember when we were shooting, a lot of people were like, are like Teddy and Medora gonna have a thing? And it was like, nope, not at all, like not how that works at all. But so it's like you can see how awkward he was with Alice, and I definitely think that like, again, so many of the decisions he makes, they do just feel like the decisions of a young man that are like just bullheaded and just trying to prove something. Like he is confident, but is he trying to prove something? Absolutely. Like he's just trying to prove something every episode, whether it's to himself or to other people, you know? But regardless, but again, that also gives like such a, for an actor, like that's a lot of fun to play with, you know?
Oh yeah, definitely. It gives you more scope. It gives you everything to sort of manipulate and maneuver around in. It's great.
Yeah.
And I say he was a very, very young politician. That's like you say, at 25.
I know.
But then again, you wonder because looking at it now, and you get the out in the States, especially the politicians in that senior positions, they're all in their 70s and 80s. And
I know, right? Yeah, we should go back, right? Oh, totally. I know. It's like start having these 1,000-year-old politicians in office that like, totally,
running for president when you're in your 80s. It's like,
I
why?
know.
So that's my personal view. Before anyone says, but I'm just,
Hey,
I'm not.
I
Before I suddenly get everyone.
trust me, you're in like agreement with pretty much everybody in the States as well. It's like, yeah, I don't know anybody who's like, yeah, no, everybody should be as old as possible in office, you know?
Yeah, as I say, from outside looking in, it does make you
I
wonder
can't imagine, man.
other things as well. But I won't get into that side of it. But yeah, from the age
Yeah.
side, I'll just keep it to the age
That's
side.
like
But yeah,
such the
'cause-
funny thing of being in America and also being in America in 2024 and like understanding that like yeah we have like podcasts and shows and everything that take place all around the world and hearing everybody's like opinions on our political stuff. It's like, hey, a lot of us agree with you guys too. It's like it's not the best system, but we don't have to get into that. We're just going to talk about the 26th president.
Yes, yeah, exactly, yeah. And to be fair, guys, we in the UK can't talk politics anyway because
Oh yeah. I know.
where he asked dire, it's crazy. Anyway, around
Yeah, right. Let's pivot. Yeah.
Yeah, pivot across because that'll be me on my soapbox for the whole night.
Yeah, right.
So kind of, I'm just I could talk to you all night, by the way, all day, Mason. I'm looking at this and I'm realising it's coming up. So now you've portrayed, I won't call him Teddy. Now you've portrayed Theodore.
Yeah, there you go.
In this show and in this season, is there anything you'll take away or learn from the journey, and how would you hope audiences perceive or react to him? Because he, like you say, is a very early character. It's not the one everybody knows.
Yeah, I think the thing that I would want people to take away is that he is, again, that this is his origin story, that like he is learning a lot about, although he is like a good leader at this time, he's becoming a better leader. And he is also a human being. There's something that I appreciate about the show that is its sense of levity a little bit. Like, I think that was definitely kind of a feeling on set that we were all kind of like, I think, there was a lot of like kind of growing pains as far as like production goes, because it's like a lot of us didn't quite know what this was because it's the first season and it's like you don't know what it is until you see it on camera and all this, that, and the other thing. Yeah. I think ultimately we had a lot of fun doing this, and I watch the show back and I see the moments that are fun, and I'm like, I'm so glad we have those, because if everything was so dire and dramatic, I think this show would be a little bit more boring. And the levity just brings so much more character to it. So I think like there's a part of me that's like, yeah, there's some high stakes stuff, but I want people to also take away that like the show's supposed to be fun, at the end of the day. And Teddy Roosevelt is growing and learning, and you're kind of supposed to kind of like go on that journey with him, and have fun while you're doing it.
That's really interesting to hear. It's fantastic as well. Yeah, it's nice to see that early stage of him, as I say, because everyone knows him as the president, and when he was that kind of,
yeah, totally.
See, the only thing I've got in my mind is him horseback, but that's because I know him from Robin Williams from Night of the Museum. That's right. That's very stiff upper.
Totally. Yeah. No, I know. It was funny. I don't remember who pointed out. Like I grew up like Robin Williams was like my hero growing up. It's like I watched all of Mork and Mindy. I've seen every Robin Williams movies. He's just like my hero. And I like got cast, and somebody was like, "Oh yeah, you and Robin Williams." And I was like, yeah, me and Robin Williams, like I totally had forgotten. So that definitely feel honored to be amongst that category.
Excellent. Robin Williams was just absolutely astounding. He's a brilliant actor. Very good serious actor as well, to be fair. And that's,
totally.
Watching him in Dead Poets Society has me in tears every single time. Captain, my captain. It's just goosebumps.
I know, right? Yeah, it was like Good Will Hunting's like one of my favorite movies, and it's just like I actually had a therapist who was really similar to his character, and like I had watched that movie after I had kind of been seeing that therapist, and I was like, and it's Robin Williams, like this is like like it just hit so hard, So yeah, definitely gone too soon, classic.
Oh yeah. Sadly. Have you got anything else coming on the horizon, or is there going to be a season 2? Can I ask that? Is that something too early to ask?
It's like we were on set, constantly talking about like multiple seasons and everything. I've yet to like receive like official word. I know that like people want to make another season. Has it been officially announced? No, but like, I don't know. I was like probably gonna message them soon, be like, "Hey, how we feeling?" You know. So yeah, hopefully season 2. I do comedy stuff on YouTube. You know, it's like sometimes I plug that. You know, with my channel is called Pineapple Flavored Productions. I make really dumb videos, really stupid. Nothing like Teddy Roosevelt. But you know, just meant to be silly. But that's about it. You know, just kind of still just kind of plugging away at that and hoping to do season 2.
Excellent, fantastic. And before I stop the recording, anything you'd like to say to people who are watching this?
Have fun. Have fun. Just enjoy the series. I'm excited for people to see the next several episodes. Some big things happen. Some really like ambitious sort of plot lines happen, and so I'm like very excited for people to see that. And yeah, and just go and like follow everybody else who's in the cast. Like everybody's just so cool and just really was so great to work with. So yeah, I think that's about it. Just have fun with the show. Don't take it too seriously. Just have a good time.
Thank you.